When I became the executive director at the Amherst Community Television, I realized that we had a real perception problem within the community. Looking at the structure being this very old, turn of the century brick, very heavily surrounded by towers of power, if you will, other side with buses. And I realized that as we moved to become more of a media access center, getting away from being television centric, that we needed to convey that visually to the community as well as saying it. So having that in mind, we started the changes internally in the structures, knowing that eventually we'd have to have the external look, right? We'd have to do something with signage, the way you enter our place. And what does it say to people?
About 2 years ago, we received accreditation for our architecture program. When we received that accreditation, there was a real push to do more outreach work within an architectural context. As part of that, the architecture program, myself and some faculty within the architecture program are starting a center called the Center for Design Engagement. And the objective of that center is to do community-based design work in communities throughout Western Massachusetts and perhaps beyond as well. While I was in Puerto Rico at the Puerto Rican Studies Association conference, I met Jim Lesko, who's the director of ACTV. And he was telling me about, he had just started about a year ago as director of ACTV and was telling me about the work that he was doing within ACTV to kind of broaden its programming and really transform it from being a community television station to a community media center. And I was really interested in that, and he said that that the building that they were in didn't reflect the desires that he had to make ACTV a community media center.
So when I bumped into Professor Krabinsky down in Puerto Rico, we would start discussing, and he told me more about the Center for Design Engagement and what their philosophies were. And I said, my God, it sounds exactly what ours is at ACTV. How do you interact with the community? How do you mobilize a community? How do you respond to a community's needs? So as we started talking about it, we met over here at ACTV, and Joseph was really good in just quickly saying, I think this would be a great project for both of us. After the students came for a tour of the building and to really get a chance to see the space, we sat down in the studio for a focus group where I was able to present what is the history of access television, what is public education government stations all about, and at the same time I was able to introduce Craig Sinclair, who was our new media technology person, who's coordinating our transition into a web-based center. So that was the beginning of getting to know the students and then to know us.
If you stand outside here for 5 minutes, this is a very heavy traffic area. People that live in Amherst don't necessarily work here, and people that work here don't necessarily live here. The possibility, just for the number of people driving by here every day who don't know that we exist but might well be intrigued to come here, is phenomenally high. And the hours are open means that they could come in, do things, and then make stuff in their own spare time.
What we began to do is look at what the requirements were, what Jim had mentioned he wanted to have happen with ACTV, but also recognize the educational component of it for the students. And one of the things that the Center for Design Engagement, what I would like it to do more of, and we definitely did it the semester that we worked here, was have students be engaged with community members and begin to kind of create a kind of dialogue in which design work can grow out of. Rather than throw the students into media, okay, design a new lobby, a new entrance for ACTV, we actually took some time to get to know the ACTV community better. And in order to do that, I devised some projects that could engage the students into asking questions about the nature of ACTV and the nature of its transformation that's happening now, and that those reflections on what ACTV is and what the ACTV community is could then inform their designs.
So for my research, I have been researching various ways that other communities or media centers market themselves and reach out to the public and expose themselves to the public ultimately. So my concept is ACTV's exposure to the community.
Well, one of the first exercises that we did was to kind of create a map of ACTV. We called it mapping ACTV, and what I had asked the students to do was to begin to understand some aspects of ACTV. And in order to do that, we held a series of workshops. So the first part of that was to have the students meet with members of ACTV, people who worked here and who are members here and work here, and find out more about what they did here, what their hopes were for the development of ACTV. To talk to them and engage them on two different levels. One is on some level of practicality, like what they think of the building, how do they move and operate within it, but also to talk about concepts and ideas as well. So what do they think about media? What do they think about television and communication within a community context? When we did the mapping projects, the mapping projects were, some of them were informed by the community interviews, some of them were just informed by students' own research on community television or community-based practices, because since we were in a academic studio, part of the early part of the semester was the students doing research on just community-based practices, both from an architectural point of view and an art point of view and in general. And so the mapping projects that the students began to do, for me, was a little exercise in how do you take a concept, an idea, and make it visual. In a sense, a map is like that. So one of the goals of the studio is to allow the design students to exercise their ability to turn an idea into a concrete reality.
I think the mapping process was very informative to us. For example, one of the projects went and asked people if they knew what ACTV was. And over 50%, just randomly in the community, over 50% of the people knew. And that's higher than I would have thought, to be quite honest with you.
I just handed them the whiteboard and I said, just write on this whiteboard what you think ACTV stood for, because then I could find out what age groups and genders maybe used it or accessed it, whatever. So for the most part, I did about 22 people, and about half of them knew what ACTV was.
Another made what looked like a subway map that took our mission statement and compared it to other nonprofits in the community, and those that were furthest away from us were on those lines. Very helpful to see who we're more aligned with. I had never conceptualized that way. So we have those tools.
The first exercise that we did was the mapping exercise, where we studied some part of ACTV and how it relates to Amherst. And I chose to do an analysis of the organizations within ACTV. And I divided them up into 4 groups. I did the civic organizations, charitable organizations, religious organizations, and cultural and art organizations. So I researched those, and I went online and I went to the different locations, and I got sort of mission statements from them. And then I found this great software that compares them. So they did an analysis and comparison report, and basically that just shoots out the ones that are most similar to ACTV. So I put that on a track system. So it's sort of, the destination is the closest mission statement to ACTV.
We've had other research that they use to kind of the viewing patterns of our stations, the hours of how much was repeated, how much was government. Things that we kind of know, but it was nice to have an outside eyes looking at that and asking those questions. So they helped formulate and put into one place many different discussions that had occurred internally.
I looked at 2 of the channels, Education and Public, and for the first 15 days of each month, I studied 6 months: January, March, June, September, December, and February. And I categorized the TV shows that appeared most often into different categories like democracy, art, health, sustainability, college, student, and things like that. And then I recorded how long they were on for and how many times they were played over that 15-day period in that month. And then I created these spirals based on how many times the show was played.
Some students began to look at the 3 channels that ACTV has, and thematically, so you have the arts, culture, and government channels, and so began to map out what that means as a way of seeing ACTV. And so how do you visualize that? And one student looked at the hits on the website relative to each of those topics and where those hits came from geographically. In a sense, it began to map out, make a kind of visual, make visual sense of something that is in a sense abstract, which is just how ACTV operates. Is important, I think, especially in design, when we're working with our students, to allow them to kind of continue to engage, in a sense, in a conversation with the design process itself. So the next project I gave them was to design a series of 4 walls that we called it an entry landscape. And the idea was that there were these 4 walls, and one had to navigate between them as a way of entering ACTV. When I gave out that project, I just gave them a drawing, a plan drawing, that showed the location and the heights of the walls, and asked them to take their research that they had previously done and turn it into a design of these 4 walls. The 4 walls were based on locations that I knew existed within the ACTV lobby and entrance, but I didn't tell the students that. I just said there was here were these 4 walls that, and I wanted you to imagine it as an entry sequence into ACTV. So by working in that way, the students aren't immediately confronted with all the practical problems of a design, and they are open to take the ideas that they've explored earlier and integrate them into some design elements.
The question is whether we'll be in this building or another building. What they did for us was a process that can be implemented either here or somewhere else, because it really looked at how do you engage the community in form, not only in theory but in form, signage, and in the various ways that you want your people, your community, as they enter your space, to take in, and how does it say what you are without you having to say anything. And I think that's invaluable. On the conservative side, if we were to pay for 12 different architectural design firms to give them 12 different, you'd be looking at 500,000 or more, right? That's the low end. So the value of that, and also I love the fact that we worked on a project with UMass. It was really exciting to watch the final projects come into our studio for their final presentations, which were being judged by people in the field of architect and design.
Well, I think one of the exciting things about this project for the students, and I think that's why it was a great capstone final studio for them, and many of them were, in reflecting about it, told me that was a really great experience for them, is that it was because they were engaged with community members and with clients, in a sense.
The students had an opportunity to come back over to ACTV to present their final projects in front of a jury, if you will, dignitaries within the architectural and design community. Everyone was very excited, and we did videotape the whole process so that our board members and our community members, our organizational members, would have a chance to look at these at another time when we started making decisions. But the fact is that it was a very professional presentation, and that they took themselves so seriously, as they should, because we never, ever could have gotten that much design and talent for zero money. And we're so lucky to have that working relationship that UMass was able to give us, and we really look forward to going to the next phase where we would work with them on the implementation of one or more of their designs.
I think one of the really satisfying things about working on this project and working with ACTV was that it was, at least for myself, the first time working in Amherst. I've done a lot of community-based work, but not in my hometown, and so this opportunity to work for myself and for the students, I think, was really quite exciting, and it aligns perfectly with the ideals of the Center for Design Engagement.
I would say this whole experience has both built internally our own understanding of how we're perceived in the community. It was a great experience of working with yet another group that has the same mission of collaborative movement on creative design, that art is really a design and it's a creative process. It's not just one single person. Now that we're working very closely, working with Denver Open Media, which is a whole national consortium that we're part of, the Knight Foundation research and setting up templates and working for other access centers across the country. I see this as a huge pinnacle moment for ACTV, and to work on our design, our image, our facilities, along with our equipment and our restaffing, is telling the community we're very serious about this. We're taking ourselves seriously, we're taking their needs seriously, and hopefully we can meet those needs as we move towards the future.
UMass's charter is really is about outreach to the community. It's really part of it. So I think that the faculty that are involved in the Center for Design Engagement within the Architecture and Design program are very excited about the Center for Design Engagement, and see opportunities like this one of working with ACTV as great educational opportunities for students, as great outreach opportunities for faculty, and as great resources for community members. So we hope in the years to come, as the center does more and more work, to become engaged in many of the communities. So, and I think that this past year was a year where we did do a lot of work, and myself particularly having done work in Holyoke, here in Amherst. This past semester I was also working in Westfield, Mass, on a downtown revitalization plan that as part of the Center for Design Engagement. So I think as we move forward and hopefully residents of Western Massachusetts will know of the Center for Design Engagement and know that there's an architecture program at UMass that is committed to providing design services to community-based organizations, and to really use that opportunity to ask questions, to kind of be creative, to be critical, and to kind of create an architecture that for communities that has all the kind of poetry and creativity that one expects of high architecture, but within a community context. And we're very excited about that.
I love the fact that we worked on a project with UMass. I mean, we're here and we're community-based, they're here, and then to see those two missions come together on creative engagement and for a purpose, for the community at large, I think is wonderful. And I think it's going to bode well for both UMass and for Amherst Community Television.